There is one thing that structural engineering blueprints never teach you. They don't teach you how to calculate the sheer weight of a secret. My name is Liam. I've spent my entire life building foundations, making sure things are solid, making sure they are safe. I thought my marriage was built the same way. Until last Friday night, when a broken phone in a dark drawer started to scream a truth I wasn't ready to hear. I'm a 36-year-old civil engineer. I'm used to looking at numbers, at right angles, at structures that behave predictably. I used to think my marriage was built the same way. Solid, transparent, safe. My wife, Maya, is a primary school teacher. We've been married for 5 years, together for 7. If you looked at us from the outside, you'd see a perfect suburban portrait. A 2-story house with a wooden porch. Late Sunday mornings filled with the scent of coffee. Forehead kisses before work. Maya is a gentle woman. She has this habit of tucking her hair behind her ear when she's stressed. She always smells faintly of baby powder and vanilla, but for the past 2 years, she has always looked exhausted. Not the kind of tired that comes from a lack of sleep, but a hollowed-out depletion from the inside. On weekends, she'd often say she had to go to school to grade papers, or drive to the northern suburbs to visit a distant aunt I'd rarely met. I never questioned it. I thought being a teacher was just a demanding job. I respected her space. That was the first crack in a foundation I thought was unbreakable. You don't see it until everything starts to give way. It happened last Friday night. The rain was heavy, a relentless drumming against the garage roof. Maya had taken a sleeping pill and drifted off around 9. She was curled under the duvet, her breath steady and fragile. I couldn't sleep. A bridge project I was working on had some discrepancies in the survey data. So I made a cup of black tea and went into the downstairs study to recheck the figures. I needed to find an old USB drive. I opened the bottom drawer of the wooden filing cabinet, the one filled with tech junk we never touch. Tangled charging cables, broken headphones, old power banks, and tucked in the very back corner, buried under a tattered notebook, was a phone. It was an old smartphone model. The screen had a long diagonal crack running from the top left corner down to the home button. I recognized it immediately. It was Maya's old phone from when we first started dating. She told me years ago that the motherboard had fried after she got caught in a rainstorm. She said she only kept it because she couldn't bear to throw away the photos of her late dog. I don't know why I picked it up. Maybe it was just harmless nostalgia. I wanted to see those early photos of us at that corner cafe, back when I still had long hair, and she wore those little floral dresses. I plugged the phone into an old cable, and I waited. 5 minutes passed. Nothing. I was about to unplug it and go back to my blueprints. But then, the screen flickered to life. The logo appeared, blinked weakly, and stayed. It was booting up. It asked for a passcode. I tried my birthday. Wrong. Our anniversary. Wrong. I hesitated. Then I remembered a strange habit Maya had years ago. She used Julian's birthday. Julian was her older brother. He had died in a factory fire 8 years ago. That accident was a wound so deep, it nearly tore her family apart. I never met Julian. I only knew him from a faded photo on her parents' mantelpiece. I typed the 4 digits. The screen unlocked. The phone immediately caught our home Wi-Fi signal. And then, it started vibrating. Incessantly. The relentless sounds of years of backlogged notifications started flooding in. But what turned my blood cold was that they weren't from the past. There were email notifications from yesterday, app alerts from last week. This phone hadn't been fried for 6 years. It was still in use, and it was hidden in a place she knew I would never look. I sat there in the dark study, the tea growing cold beside me. Outside, the rain kept falling, and inside, the foundation was starting to crumble. I sat there in the dark, staring at the cracked screen as it pulsed with light. The notifications kept coming. Emails, calendar alerts, a messaging app I didn't recognize. My heart was doing something strange in my chest. A slow, heavy thud that felt like a warning. I shouldn't look. A husband who trusts his wife doesn't look. But the foundation was already cracked, and I needed to know how deep the damage went. I opened the photo gallery. I expected to see the old dog she talked about. I expected to see our early dates at the pier, the blurry selfies, the sunsets at the beach. But there was nothing from our past. The gallery was filled with folders, organized by year, by month, by date. I opened the most recent one. The first photo was taken 3 days ago. The day Maya said she was staying late at school for a parent-teacher conference. The day she came home smelling like antiseptic and told me she was just exhausted from talking all day. The photo was taken in a dimly lit room. A small room with pale blue curtains. Maya was sitting on a plastic stool next to a hospital bed. She was holding a small bowl of soup. And on the bed was a man. I had never seen this man in my life. He was gaunt. His skin stretched tight over a skeletal frame. Half of his face and neck were covered in thick, jagged scar tissue. The kind of scars that only come from fire. He had an oxygen tube in his nose, and his eyes were staring blankly at the ceiling. I scrolled to the next photo. Maya was leaning over him. She was wiping his forehead with a damp cloth. The look on her face, it wasn't the look of a tired teacher. It was a look of profound, agonizing tenderness, an intimacy that I thought belonged only to us. I kept scrolling, backwards through time, 2025, 2024, 2023. There were thousands of them. Maya reading to him, Maya holding his limp, scarred hand, Maya sleeping in the plastic chair beside his bed, while her phone recorded the slow rise and fall of his chest. I found a video. I turned the volume down until it was just a whisper. The sound of rain outside my study matched the static in the recording. Maya's voice came through the tiny, cracked speaker. "It's okay," she whispered. "I'm here now. I brought the book you like." The man made a low, guttural sound in his throat, a sound of recognition, and Maya smiled, a sad, beautiful smile that broke my heart into a million pieces. Because that smile, that exact expression of pure devotion, was the one she gave me on our wedding day. I put the phone down on the wooden desk. It made a sharp, hollow sound. I looked at the clock. 3:14 in the morning. Upstairs, my wife was sleeping in our bed. The woman I thought I knew. The woman who had shared my life, my home, my secrets. But she had a second life, a secret world built behind a broken screen. Who was he? Why had she spent 5 years caring for a ghost in a hidden room? And why did she have to lie to me about it every single day? The rain kept falling, washing over the glass in steady waves. I stood up slowly. My legs felt like they were made of lead. I didn't go upstairs. I went back to the drawer, and I found a small notepad. I opened the location details on the most recent photo. It was a set of GPS coordinates, an address for a private care facility in the northern suburbs, the exact area she always went to visit her distant aunt. I wrote the address down. I knew what I had to do. I couldn't wait for her to wake up and tell me another lie. I couldn't live in a house built on a hollow foundation. Tomorrow, I needed to see the room with the blue curtains. I needed to meet the stranger in the photo. The sun hadn't even started to think about rising. When I backed the car out of the driveway, the rain had settled into a steady gray mist, clinging to the windshield like a cold, wet hand. I didn't leave a note for Maya. I didn't want to wake her. I just watched her sleeping silhouette for a moment, nodding the way her hand was tucked under her chin, a habit I once thought was adorable. Now, it just looked like a shield. The drive to the northern suburbs took 40 minutes. 40 minutes of nothing but the hum of the tires and the rhythmic, hypnotic clicking of the wipers. Left to right. Truth, lie. The GPS coordinates led me to a place called Pinecrest. It wasn't a hospital. It was a private care facility, tucked away behind a row of ancient, weeping willow trees. It looked expensive. It looked like a place designed for people who wanted the world to forget them. I parked in the shadows of the visitor lot. My hands were shaking, so I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I was a civil engineer. I dealt in facts, and the fact was, I was about to walk into a life my wife had built without me. The lobby was empty, smelling of floor wax and stale lilies. A single nurse sat behind a desk, her face illuminated by the blue glow of a computer screen. I didn't give my real name. I just told her I was there to see the man in room 402. The man with the scars. She didn't ask for ID. She just pointed down a long, dimly lit corridor. "He's been restless tonight," she whispered, her voice echoing off the linoleum floor. Maya usually stays until midnight to calm him down. Maya, the nurse, knew her name. She knew her schedule. She knew her better than I did. I walked down the hallway, my boots making a hollow, rhythmic sound. Thud, thud, thud. Each step felt like I was walking underwater. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of antiseptic and old age. I reached room 402. The door was slightly ajar. A sliver of warm, yellow light spilled out into the dark hallway. And there they were, the pale blue curtains from the photo. I stood there for a long time, just staring at the wood grain of the door. Part of me wanted to turn around, to drive home, to crawl back into bed and pretend I never found the phone. But the foundation was gone. The house was already in the air. I pushed the door open. Slowly, silently. The room was small. A television was on in the corner. The volume muted. Flickering images of an old black and white movie, casting dancing shadows on the walls. And there he was, the man from the screen. In person, he looked even smaller. The scarring on his neck was a deep, angry purple. His breathing was a thin, whistling sound, as if his lungs were made of dry paper. I walked to the side of the bed. My shadow fell across his face. His eyes, clouded and distant, slowly moved until they met mine. He didn't look afraid. He didn't look surprised. He just looked. "Weary, who are you?" I whispered. The words felt like stones in my mouth. He didn't answer. He couldn't. But he slowly lifted a trembling hand and pointed toward a small wooden dresser next to the bed. On top of it, framed in silver, was a photograph. It wasn't a photo of him. It wasn't a photo of Maya. It was a photo of a house that had burned to the ground. And standing in front of the ruins was a younger version of my wife, holding the hand of a man who looked exactly like the person on the bed. I picked up the frame. My thumb brushed against the glass, and that's when I saw the inscription on the back, written in Maya's delicate, cursive handwriting. To my brother Julian, I will never let the world take you again. I will keep you safe, no matter the cost. The cost. Suddenly, the exhaustion in Maya's eyes made sense. The secret bank accounts, the parent-teacher conferences, the 5 years of lying. She hadn't been cheating on me. She had been protecting me from the ghost of a brother who was supposed to be dead. A brother who had started a fire and lost everything. I looked back at the man on the bed. Julian, the brother-in-law I was never supposed to meet. He was watching me, a single tear tracking a path through the scar tissue on his cheek. And then, from the doorway behind me, I heard the sound of a key turning, the sound of a hair tie being pulled back, the scent of baby powder, and vanilla. I didn't turn around. I didn't have to. The foundation had finally hit the ground. I didn't turn around. I didn't have to. The scent of baby powder and vanilla was enough to tell me she was there. I heard her intake of breath, a sharp, broken sound, like a bird hitting a window pane. I heard her keys hit the linoleum floor with a metallic jangle, echoing through the small, sterile room. Liam, she whispered. Her voice was barely a thread of sound. How did you find us? I didn't answer right away. I kept my eyes on Julian, watching the way his chest struggled to pull in the air. The silver frame felt heavy in my hand, cold and undeniable. The phone in the drawer. I said, my voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. I just wanted to see the photos of your dog, Maya. I didn't know I'd find a ghost. She walked into the room, her footsteps slow, tentative. She didn't come to me. She went straight to the bed, to Julian. She took his trembling hand in hers, protectively, as if I were a threat she had been hiding from for a decade. He's not a ghost, she said, tears finally spilling over her lashes. He's my brother. He's all I have left of a home that turned to ash. I turned to look at her then. She looked so small, so fragile under the harsh fluorescent lights. The parent-teacher conferences, the late nights at school, they weren't an affair of the heart. They were an affair of survival. The fire, I said, gesturing to the photo of the ruins. The news said everyone died, Maya. The police report said the building was empty. She closed her eyes, pressing Julian's hand against her cheek. Julian started it. She whispered, it was an accident. A cigarette. A pile of solvent rags. But 3 other men. They didn't make it out. The world wanted a monster to blame, and Julian was the easiest target. She took a shaky breath. I found him in the wreckage, barely breathing, smelling of smoke and burnt skin. I knew if I called the police, if I took him to a public hospital, he would spend the rest of his life in a cage. Or worse, So she had made a choice that a 24-year-old girl should never have to make. She had declared him dead. She had used her inheritance, her savings, every extra hour of work to keep him in this private, anonymous room. She had protected him from the law, and she had protected me from the burden of his existence. I didn't want you to be an accomplice, Liam, she said, looking up at me with eyes that were hollow with grief. I wanted you to have a normal life. I wanted our house to be a place of light, not a place where we hid a dying man's secrets. I looked at her, and then at Julian. I thought about the 5 years of our marriage. Every time I complained about being tired, every time I asked why she was so distant, she was carrying the weight of a dead man on her shoulders. She was paying for his medicine, his oxygen, his silence, the anger I had felt in the study, the cold, sharp sting of betrayal. It began to evaporate. It was replaced by a heavy, aching respect. A structural engineer knows that sometimes you have to build a wall to keep the storm out. Maya had built a wall around our entire life. I walked over to the bed. I reached out, and for the first time, I touched Julian's shoulder. He flinched, then went still. You don't have to do this alone anymore, I whispered. Maya looked at me, her mouth opening in a silent sob. The foundation was cracked, Maya, I said, taking her hand in mine. But we can reinforce it. We don't have to hide him. Not from me. We stayed in that room until the sun came up. The rain finally stopped, leaving the world outside looking washed and new. We didn't talk much. We just sat there, one on each side of the bed, watching the man who was the bridge between our two lives. Julian passed away 3 months later. He died in his sleep, on a warm afternoon when the scent of lilies was thick in the air. We buried him under a different name, in a quiet corner of the cemetery. Our house is quieter now. Maya doesn't go to the northern suburbs anymore. She still smells of vanilla, but the exhaustion in her eyes has started to fade. Sometimes, I still find her looking at that old, cracked phone in the drawer, but she doesn't hide it anymore. We built a new life, one without secrets, one where the foundation is no longer made of silence, but of a truth we carry together. The rain has a different sound tonight. It's no longer a drumming, no longer a warning. It's just a steady, rhythmic hum, vibrating through the glass of our bedroom window. I lie here in the dark, watching the shadows of the willow trees dance across the ceiling. Beside me, Maya is breathing, a deep, unburdened breath, the kind of breath she couldn't take for 8 long years. I think about the bridge I'm building downtown. A bridge is just a way to connect two places that were never meant to meet. I realize now that Julian was our bridge, He was the pain that kept us apart, and the truth that finally brought us together. Sometimes, in the middle of the night, I still see the blue curtains in my mind. I see the silver frame, and the tired smile of a man who just wanted to be remembered. But the weight, that heavy, suffocating weight in my chest, is gone. Maya told me yesterday that she went back to that room, not to visit anyone, but to give the new patient a book. She said the room doesn't smell like antiseptic anymore. It smells like fresh air and new beginnings. We don't talk about the phone anymore. It's still there, in the bottom drawer, under the tangled cables and the old notebooks. But it's just a piece of plastic now, a broken screen that no longer needs to scream. I reach out, and I find Maya's hand under the covers. Her skin is warm. Her pulse is steady. I think about the years we lost to the silence. And then, I think about the years we have ahead of us. Years built on a foundation that was broken, reinforced, and finally made whole. The rain is slowing down now. The world outside is turning a soft, deep blue. The birds will be waking up soon. But for now, there is only the silence. A beautiful, honest silence. I close my eyes. I listen to the rhythm of her heart. I listen to the fatting sound of the water on the roof. And for the first time in a long time, I'm not calculating anything. I'm just here. Good night, Julian. Good night, Maya. Good night to the secrets we no longer have to carry.